As the rain fell outside Reed's grill, a story of redemption quietly unfolded inside. But this is just the beginning. What would you have done in Thomas's shoes? We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Your stories inspire us too. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss tomorrow's powerful continuation of this journey. One story, one chance to make things right. See you in the next chapter. He went undercover at his restaurant. But what two kids said changed everything. Thomas Reed had built a name for himself over the past 2 decades. At 45 years old, he was the proud owner of Reed's Grill, a beloved restaurant nestled in the heart of downtown Chicago. The place had a glowing reputation, 5-star reviews, local awards, loyal customers who lined up outside even in the snow. On paper, everything looked perfect. But lately, Thomas had felt a strange distance growing between himself and the very place that once felt like his second home. The flavors were still rich, the service still fast, but something deeper felt off. Was it the culture, the staff, or perhaps something he couldn't quite name? Whatever it was, it tugged at him, quietly, persistently, until he could no longer ignore it. So, one chilly Tuesday evening in March, Thomas did something he hadn't done in years. He slipped out of his office, traded his blazer for a plain, grey hoodie, jeans, and a worn baseball cap, then drove 5 miles across town. He parked in a spot he usually reserved for delivery trucks and entered through the front doors, not as the boss, but as a regular customer. The dining room was lively, filled with the clinking of glasses and the comforting hum of conversation. He hadn't told a soul about his plan. That was the point. No one looked up as he passed. No one greeted him by name. He was just another face in the crowd. Sliding into a booth near the back, Thomas glanced around with fresh eyes. The floorboards creaked the way they always had. The lighting cast the same warm glow over the dark wooden tables. Yet seeing it from the customer's point of view gave him a whole new perspective. Servers moved efficiently, balancing trays of burgers, steaks, and house-made pies. A young couple sat across from him, sharing a basket of fries and laughing quietly. Nearby, an older man sipped coffee alone while flipping through the sports section of the Chicago Tribune. Reed's Grill was alive. But was it right? A cheerful waitress, no older than 22, approached with a practiced smile. "Evening. Can I start you off with a drink?" she asked. Thomas kept his voice low, playing the part. "Just water, thanks, and give me a few minutes to check the menu." She nodded and walked off, none the wiser. He unfolded the menu. One he had helped design word for word and pretended to read. But his real focus wasn't the entrees. It was the atmosphere, the tone, the little things people didn't say to his face when they knew he signed the paychecks. He wanted truth, not flattery. That's when he heard the voices. 2 boys, sitting in the booth behind him, speaking in hushed tones. At first, he thought nothing of it, but then he heard one of them mention someone ruining everything, and then his name. Not directly, not yet. But something about the way they spoke stopped him cold, and just like that, what began as a quiet undercover visit turned into something far more personal than Thomas had ever expected. Thomas sat perfectly still, the laminated menu in his hands suddenly feeling heavy. The boys in the booth behind him couldn't have been older than 13 or 14. Their voices were low, nervous, but the words they spoke cut through the steady hum of the restaurant like a blade. "Are you sure this is where he comes?" one of them whispered, his voice cracking with unease. "That's what Mom said," the other replied, sharper and more confident. "She said he's always here. He owns the place." Thomas's breath caught in his throat. He? Was it possible? Were they talking about him? He didn't move. He didn't turn around. He just listened, heart pounding, ears straining to catch every syllable. "What if we get caught?" the anxious boy asked. "We're not even supposed to be here." "We won't," the second boy snapped. "We just need to see him. Mum said we had to see the guy who ruined her life." Thomas's stomach dropped. His grip on the menu tightened. He'd come here tonight looking for the truth, the unfiltered thoughts of strangers, but what he was hearing felt like something else entirely. This wasn't about food or service. This wasn't even about the restaurant. This was personal. He forced himself to remain calm as the waitress returned with his water. "Ready to order?" she asked with a bright smile. "Yeah, I'll take the house special," Thomas said, barely glancing at the menu. She jotted it down and left again, but the food was the last thing on his mind. He leaned slightly to the side, just enough to hear better without drawing attention. "Mom said he stole everything from her," one of the boys muttered. "Her recipes, her job, even her future. And now look at us," the other added bitterly. "She works 2 jobs, we live in that tiny apartment, and she still cries some nights." Thomas felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. He hadn't expected praise or fanfare tonight, but he definitely hadn't expected this. These kids believed he was responsible for destroying their mother's life. And the worst part? He didn't even know who their mother was. Yet. He racked his brain. Dozens of employees had come and gone over the years. Some left on good terms, some not so much. Could he have missed something? Ignored someone? Made a decision that, in his mind, was just business but ended up costing someone everything? Just then, the more confident boy spoke again. "Em said he wouldn't hide. Said if he's really the man he pretends to be, he'll face us." Thomas felt his heart skip a beat. They weren't just here by accident. This was planned. Their mother had sent them here with a purpose. His undercover visit had become something far more complicated. This wasn't about reconnecting with a restaurant. This was about reckoning with a past he didn't even realize was waiting for him. And as he sat there, listening to the sons of a woman whose life he might have changed forever, Thomas knew one thing for sure. He couldn't leave without answers. Thomas couldn't sit still any longer. Every word from the boys behind him echoed in his head. Stole everything. Ruined her life. He pretends to be a good man. The more he listened, the more unsettled he became. He needed answers. He needed to see their faces. With a deep breath, he slid out of the booth and made his way to the counter near the kitchen, pretending to check on his order. From that angle, he could get a better look. The boys sat in a booth against the wall, one in a navy hoodie with a mop of curls falling over his forehead, the other wearing a baseball cap pulled low. They looked anxious, shoulders hunched, eyes scanning the room like they were waiting for someone to confront them. "Hey," Thomas called quietly to the waitress who had served him earlier, keeping his tone casual. "Those 2 kids in the back, do they come in here a lot?" She looked over her shoulder, then shrugged. "Never seen them before. Why? Are they bothering you?" No, he said quickly. "Just curious." He returned to his booth, his mind racing. If these boys were telling the truth and their mother had worked here, had trusted him, then something had gone terribly wrong, and judging by their anger, their visit wasn't some random outing. This was a mission. "I just want to know why," the boy in the hoodie said, leaning forward. "Why he did it. Why he ruined everything. Mom never tells us the full story." "What if we're wrong?" the younger one asked softly. "What if it's not even him?" "It's him," the other replied without hesitation. "Mom showed me his picture. It's definitely him." Thomas's blood ran cold. They had a photo of him. He felt like the walls were closing in. He hadn't recognized their voices, didn't know their names, but they knew him, and their conviction that he was the man who destroyed their mother's career was terrifying. He couldn't just walk out and pretend none of this had happened. So, heart pounding, he stood, walked slowly over to their booth, and gently cleared his throat. "Hey fellas," he said, doing his best to sound calm and non-threatening. "You both seem a little tense. Everything okay?" Both boys froze, eyes wide. The one in the hoodie stared hard, then slowly narrowed his eyes. "Why do you care?" he asked, guarded. "I just thought—" Thomas hesitated, then tried a new approach. "You said you were looking for someone. Maybe I can help." There was a long pause, The younger boy shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his brother, who was still staring at Thomas with laser focus. Then, the older one spoke. "Wait a second," he said slowly. "You look familiar." Thomas's heart dropped. "You're him," the boy said, voice rising. "You're Thomas Reed," the younger boy gasped. "No way. Is it really him?" Thomas gave a slow, solemn nod. "Yeah, I'm Thomas Reed, but how do you know who I am?" The boy's glare sharpened. "Because of what you did to our mom." And just like that, the storm broke. Thomas stood frozen. The booth felt colder, now, the weight of the boy's accusation settling on his shoulders like bricks. "Because of what you did to our mom." The words hit harder than he'd expected. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, almost breathless, he asked, "Who's your mom?" The boy's jaw clenched. "Melissa Jameson. Ring a bell?" And it did, instantly. The name struck Thomas like a punch to the chest. Melissa had worked at Reed's Grill nearly a decade ago, a brilliant sous chef with sharp instincts and bold ideas. She was young but passionate, always sketching new recipes on napkins, talking about opening her own place one day. And then one day, she was gone. No goodbye, no explanation. He'd chalked it up to burnout, maybe family issues. But he never followed up. He never asked. "I remember Melissa," Thomas said slowly, "but I didn't know she had kids. I didn't know things ended that badly." "She told us everything," the older boy snapped. "How you stole her recipes, how every article about this place only mentioned your name. How you made sure no one else would hire her." Thomas blinked. "Wait, what?" "You blacklisted her," the younger one said, quieter but no less fierce. "She said she couldn't get a job at any decent kitchen in the city after she left here." "No," Thomas said, shaking his head. "That's not—" But he stopped himself. Was it? His memory raced back through those early years, long nights, high pressure, short tempers. He remembered a few tense conversations with other restaurant owners. Was it possible something he'd said, even offhand, had sabotaged Melissa's chances? He didn't mean to ruin anyone's life. But what if he had? "I swear to you," Thomas said finally, his voice low and raw. "If I did something that hurt your mother's career, intentionally or not, I had no idea, but I want to make it right." The boys looked at him, skeptical but silent. Thomas continued, "I need to talk to her, in person. Not to defend myself, just to listen. Please, will you tell her I want to see her?" There was a long pause. The older boy crossed his arms. "Why should we trust you?" Thomas nodded slowly. "You shouldn't. Not yet. But I'm not asking for trust. I'm asking for a chance." The younger boy looked up at his brother, then back at Thomas. "She's not far. We live about 6 miles from here, apartment complex off Jackson Avenue." Thomas pulled out his phone, thumbs trembling. "Give me the address. I'll come tonight." "You really mean that?" the older one asked, his voice now mixed with disbelief and caution. "I do," Thomas said. "If your mum's been carrying this pain because of me, I owe her more than just an apology." The boys exchanged one last look. Then the older one gave a slow nod. "Okay, we'll tell her." And as Thomas scribbled down the address and walked out into the night, the chill in the air felt different now, not from fear, but from the weight of truth finally demanding to be faced. The apartment complex on Jackson Avenue was a far cry from the polished world Thomas Reed was used to. The paint peeled from the siding, and a flickering porch light buzzed overhead. He parked his car and sat still for a moment, staring at the building. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than he realized. This is it, he thought. No more running. No more pretending. He made his way up the narrow steps, heart pounding louder with every one. When the door opened, the older boy, Jacob, stood there, his eyes wary but not angry. "You came," he said, surprised. "I said I would," Thomas replied, voice steady. "Is your mom home?" Jacob nodded, and stepped aside. Inside, the apartment was small, maybe 800 square feet, but it was clean, lived in, full of warmth despite its modesty. A floral scent hung faintly in the air, and framed photos of the boys lined a shelf above the TV. In the center of the room, sitting on an old but well-kept couch, was Melissa Jameson. She looked up slowly, her eyes meeting his. The years had changed her. There were soft lines around her face now, and streaks of silver in her hair. But she was still unmistakably her. Fierce, proud, sharp as ever. "Thomas Reed," she said coldly. "Didn't think I'd ever see you. Here." Thomas nodded, removing his cap. "Melissa," he said quietly. "I didn't know. I had no idea how bad things got for you." She leaned back, arms crossed. "Of course you didn't. Men like you never do. You take, you rise, and the ones you step over, we just disappear." He didn't argue. He didn't interrupt. He listened. "I believed in you," she continued, her voice trembling with old rage. "I gave you everything I had, my recipes, my time, my loyalty. And what did I get? Not a single mention, no credit, no phone calls when I left. And then, no one would hire me, not a soul." Thomas swallowed hard. "Melissa, I never meant to silence you. I never intended to take what wasn't mine. But I see it now. How my ambition, my tunnel vision, how it hurt you. And if I can make it right, I will." She looked at him for a long moment, expression unreadable. "Words are easy," she said softly. "You're right," he replied. "That's why I'm offering you more than words. I want you to come back to Reed's Grill as co-head chef, full creative control, public recognition. Your name on the menu, on the walls, where it always should have been." Melissa blinked, clearly caught off guard. "You'd do that?" "Yes. Not to buy forgiveness, but to give you back what you should never have lost." Silence stretched between them. Then finally, she reached out her hand. "I'll think about it," she said. Thomas shook it gently, a flicker of relief breaking through his guilt. Later, as he left the apartment and stepped into the cool night air, he felt something lift. The road ahead would be long, redemption wouldn't come easy. But maybe, for the first time, it was finally within reach. This story wasn't just about a restaurant. It was about ownership, accountability, and second chances. Sometimes the people we forget are the ones who helped us the most. And sometimes all it takes to start healing is the courage to face the truth. Now we want to hear your voice. What would you have done if you were in Thomas's shoes? Have you ever had to right a wrong from your past? Or had someone try to make things right with you? Share your thoughts, experiences, or even just where you're watching from in the comments below. We love hearing how these stories connect with people around the world. And if Melissa's journey inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss tomorrow's next story. Because, trust me, it's one you don't want to miss. Your comment could be the spark for someone else's reflection, forgiveness, or even reconciliation. Let's talk about it.